Welcome back to Velo View, where we take you on a journey through the golden age of motoring, exploring the cars that shaped an era and left their mark on automotive history. Today we are turning the clock back to the 1970s to revisit a pair of classic British icons, the Vauxhall Viva and the Vauxhall Chevette. These two models may not have been supercars or luxury machines, but they represented something far more important, the everyday car for the everyday driver. They were affordable, dependable, and designed for practicality, becoming a common sight on British roads for much of the decade. The Vauxhall Viva had already made its debut in the early 1960s, but by 1970, it had matured into its third and final generation, the Viva HC. This was the model that truly captured the spirit of the time. The Viva HC had a clean and simple design, with crisp lines, tidy proportions, and a no-nonsense appearance that appealed to families and working-class drivers alike. It was offered as a two-door or four-door saloon, and also as an estate, giving customers a wide range of options. Its design wasn't flashy, but it had a charm in its honesty. The Viva wasn't trying to be anything it wasn't, it was a straightforward, reliable car for the people. Under the bonnet, the Viva was powered by a variety of small-capacity engines, the most common being the 1,256cc four-cylinder. This little engine produced around 58 horsepower, which doesn't sound like much, but for a car of its size and weight, it was enough to keep up with city traffic and cruise comfortably on the open road. There were also larger engines available in certain versions, going up to 1.8 liters for the more performance-oriented models, such as the Viva GT, which offered a touch of excitement for those who wanted more power. The Viva used a traditional rear-wheel drive layout, which made it fun to handle and gave it a sense of balance that many small cars of the time lacked. It wasn't a sports car by any stretch, but its light steering and predictable handling made it enjoyable to drive. The suspension was soft, designed to prioritize comfort over cornering ability, and the ride quality was one of the Viva's strong points. It handled Britain's bumpy roads well, absorbing potholes and uneven surfaces with ease. On the other hand, when pushed too hard into corners, the rear end could step out slightly, reminding you of its old-school dynamics. For many drivers, that unpredictability added to the fun. The four-speed manual gearbox had a slightly notchy feel, but it was mechanically satisfying once you got used to it. The brakes, especially on later models fitted with front discs, were adequate and confidence-inspiring for the standards of the era. Inside, the Viva was basic but practical. The dashboard featured simple dials and switches, the materials were durable rather than luxurious, and the seats were trimmed in vinyl that could withstand the wear and tear of daily use. The cabin layout was straightforward, and the visibility from the large windows was excellent. It seated 4 adults comfortably, and the boot space was generous for a car of its size. Everything about the Viva was built with function in mind. There were no gimmicks or unnecessary frills, but it delivered what most families needed: reliability, economy, and ease of ownership. Maintenance was simple, too. The car's mechanical simplicity meant that most owners could do basic repairs themselves, a major advantage at a time when home servicing was common. By the mid-1970s, the automotive landscape was shifting rapidly. Fuel crises, changing consumer tastes, and growing competition from European manufacturers meant that Vauxhall needed something fresh to keep up. That's when the Chevette arrived in 1975. Although it came later, the Chevette carried much of the Viva's spirit while introducing new ideas that suited the era's changing demands. Based on General Motors' T-Car platform, which was shared with the Opel Kadett, the Chevette was Vauxhall's first real step into the modern hatchback age. It was a compact car that combined practicality with a more youthful, dynamic image. The Chevette's design was more aerodynamic than the Viva's, featuring a distinctive, droop snoot, front end and a sleeker silhouette. The three-door hatchback version quickly became popular because of its versatility. It was small enough for city driving yet spacious enough for a small family. A four-door saloon and estate were also offered, giving customers flexibility to choose what suited them best. Under the hood, most Chevettes used the familiar 1,256cc engine from the Viva. With around 58 horsepower on tap, it wasn't fast, but it felt lively enough due to the car's lighter weight. The Chevette's handling was one of its highlights, thanks to its compact size and rear-wheel drive setup. It felt agile around corners, and although the ride was still on the softer side, it managed to blend comfort and drivability nicely. Inside, the Chevette was a noticeable improvement over the Viva. The dashboard design was more modern, the controls were better laid out, and the interior had a slightly higher quality feel. It still wasn't luxurious, but it was more refined and user-friendly. The driving position was good, and visibility remained excellent, a quality both cars shared. The hatchback's boot space was practical and flexible, making it ideal for young couples or small families who needed a car that could adapt to everyday life. Fuel economy was respectable, with figures around 35 miles per gallon, which was a major selling point during an era when fuel prices were climbing. What made both the Viva and Chevette memorable was their simplicity and accessibility. These were cars that didn't overcomplicate driving. They were easy to own, easy to fix, and cheap to run. For many people in the 1970s, a Vauxhall Viva or Chevette was their first car, their family car, or even their work vehicle. They became woven into the fabric of daily life in Britain. You could see them parked outside terraced houses, driven by young apprentices, or loaded up for family holidays by the seaside. They were part of the background of everyday British motoring, which is why they hold such nostalgia today. However, they weren't perfect. Rust was a notorious issue for both models, often appearing in the wheel arches, sills, and floor pans. Build quality varied, and although the engines were tough, they required regular maintenance to stay reliable. But even with those flaws, they earned a reputation for being dependable, straightforward cars that rarely left their owners stranded. They were the kind of vehicles that would soldier on with basic care, which is why so many stayed on the roads well into the 1980s. Today, both the Vauxhall Viva and Chevette are considered charming classics. Enthusiasts love them for their mechanical simplicity and old-school feel. The Viva GT, in particular, has become collectible, while well-preserved Chevettes, especially the sporty HS and HSR variants, are sought after by fans of retro rallying. Seeing one at a classic car show instantly brings smiles, as people reminisce about the days when these humble Vauxhalls were everywhere. Restoring one can be a labor of love, but the reward is owning a genuine piece of British motoring history that's as approachable today as it was 50 years ago. Both cars symbolize an era before technology took over driving. They remind us of a time when cars were purely mechanical, when you could feel every vibration through the steering wheel and every shift through the gearbox. Driving them now is like stepping back in time, a nostalgic experience that modern vehicles can't replicate. The Viva and Chevette might not have been glamorous, but they were honest, dependable, and full of character, and that's exactly why they're still remembered so fondly. Thanks for joining me on this trip back to the 1970s. If you enjoyed this detailed look at the Vauxhall Viva and Chevette and want more in-depth reviews of classic cars from the past, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite Vauxhall memory, and don't forget to subscribe to VeloView for more timeless automotive stories and reviews every week.